Give me the ceiling and the floor, you think, for Notre Dame.
The ceiling is 12-0. I mean, they have a better roster than every team they play. There's a lot of talent, a lot of potential, but as a coach, you love the word potential during recruiting. You hate using the word potential when you're talking about your team.
Yeah.
Because if it's potential, it means it's unrealized.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Crain and Company. Got a fantastic show for you today. David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback. To my left, Blaine Crain, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver. To my right, we have a very special guest coming on. I'm going to bring him here in a moment. But first, got to talk about Notre Dame. I don't know if anybody has won out more with the new college football playoff format rules that we're looking at than Notre Dame. They seem to be the smart one that has hung out and decided to not join a conference until they have to. Because why? Why not be the belle of the ball? They're the best-looking chick, not in a conference of any team in the country. They've got a very, very impressive schedule, at least on paper, before the season, which we're going to get into as well. And Marcus Freeman, coming off a year in which they almost won the national championship, finished runner-up. Riley Leonard's gone. Have some questions for Notre Dame. And what a fantastic person to bring in to talk about that. Our friend from the Irish Breakdown to give us a little bit of a season preview here of Notre Dame, really getting into the weeds. Bryan Driskell. BD, what's up, man?
Hey, guys, how are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks so much for coming back. We appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure as always.
Well, Bryan, I want to start with a little bit kind of a 30,000-foot view of this Notre Dame team and the fan base expectation. We know it's always going to be really, really high for the Fighting Irish, one of the biggest brands in college football, and they have put themselves in championship position, it seems like more times than not here lately, so it's not like that's out of the realm. But after finishing runner-up last year and having the season that Notre Dame did and what they've lost, I know Fighting Irish fans want to go back and win the national championship. I get it. But is there a little bit of a kind of a deep breath of relief and maybe, hey, Marcus Freeman, you got a quarterback you're developing from your own farm system now. Not that it's a bonus year, but is there kind of a little bit of leeway for maybe Notre Dame to take a step back and it not be an unmitigated disaster?
No, it's Notre Dame. I mean, it's like if you went to the best steakhouse you've ever been at, right, and you had a steak, would you want to go home the next day and have a flank steak? Your wife's like, hey, I'm making a flank steak. You're like, oh, sure, great, yeah, that's totally fine, honey. No, I mean, you get that taste, you want to have it, but I mean, that's the standard at Notre Dame. I think, what we've talked about on our show and what I think Notre Dame fans feel is I don't know that they have the championship or bust mindset with this team. And I think maybe that's what you're getting at, where I don't think they're going to be okay with like 10-2 and a Pop-Tarts Bowl bid, right? As they break in a new quarterback because there's so much talent coming back. It's more so, hey, you got to get back to the semis. Get back to at least the semis, and then anything beyond that sort of like gravy as they start prepping for 2026. So I don't think it's they got to win the Natty or it's a failure. But I do think that another playoff berth and a win or two is absolutely the sort of the new standard for Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And with some of the pieces coming back, I understand that you can get away with some things. Before I kick it over to Coney here, man, it seems like, and again, you're on the inside of Notre Dame, and in the comments, I really want Notre Dame fans to I want to see if they agree with me or not. Notre Dame has always recruited well, right? We know the prestige that Notre Dame has. But it seems like the level of athlete from a depth and consistency standpoint has improved under Marcus Freeman. Not that Notre Dame was just a bunch of white offensive linemen that were really good and some okay pieces around them that, you had an Eagle Scout and one of the mayor's kids. But like Notre Dame looks like, they can run with anybody. It looks like their side-to-side movement, their skill position athleticism has increased under Marcus Freeman. Is that something that you guys have noticed, or am I just inventing something in my mind?
You're spot on. I mean, when was the last time that Notre Dame went into a season with arguably the best running back and cornerback in college football?
That's a great point.
It's arguable, right?
Yeah.
It's since Lou Holtz was at Notre Dame. I mean, you've got to go back to 92 when it was like Jerome Bettis, Reggie Brooks, Tom Carter, guys like that. And Notre Dame would always have like a guy like that, right? Like a Will Fuller, a Kyle Hamilton. in what we haven't seen, a Jalen Smith, a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but there was always like you'd had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and then you'd have like a Drew White, who's a nice player.
Noah
or
Thompson.
You have Jalen Smith, and then you'd have Joe Schmidt beside him, that kind of thing. And what Marcus Freeman has done, and it really started his in 2021 when he was the defensive coordinator. That's why I think the defense is a little bit ahead of the offense, is because his first class as a defensive coordinator was Benjamin Morrison and Jalen Sneed and Josh Burnham and guys that were juniors last year. So you started to see that impact, but it's been a focal point. It's like, look, we need to get longer, we need to get faster, and it's everywhere. It's not just a guy. I mean, you talk about, Notre Dame goes into the year where if Jeremiah Love goes down, in my opinion, that's still a top 3 to 5 running back room. I mean, Jadarian Price is 1,000-yard back for Notre Dame if it wasn't for the presence of Jeremiah Love. And so, that you can lose a Benjamin Morrison in game 6 and replace him with a guy that's taller, stronger, and faster. And Leonard Moore is a true freshman. It just speaks to their ability to evaluate players. And they don't get the recognition for it quite what I think people should, because, Leonard Moore's a 3-star player, and, some of these guys weren't ranked as high, but they do a great job of finding those athletes with the high ceilings. And that's what they've built, and it's linebacker, safety, corner, running back. It's really everywhere. You're seeing Notre Dame's as athletic as anybody in the country.
Yeah, well, as many slogans as we have in politics, I think I want one for Notre Dame. I'm going to call it the MIFA initiative, Make the Irish Fast Again. And it seems like Marcus Freeman Cone has done that. I'll get you a hat, Bryan.
Bryan, when we had our 2024 and national championship recap with you, you were really the first guy I heard who said, look, I think C.J. Carr is going to be the starting quarterback at Notre Dame in 2025. And this was after 2 seasons where Marcus Freeman went to the portal to get really the top transfer portal quarterback available. 1 year with Sam Hartman, the next year with Riley Leonard. And Jake and I were talking about this last week. Is the 2025 iteration of Notre Dame football going to lean more heavily on that defense and not ask a young quarterback to do so much? But like we're talking about here, you might have the best running back in the country. This wide receiver room, I think, is going to be one of the best rooms in the country when you talk about Faison and Greathouse coming back, and you get Malachi Fields transferring in from Virginia. What's your expectation at the quarterback's position since we talked 6 months ago? Who's going to be the starter? How's it progressing? And is it going to just be a field manager sort of role? Or are they going to be able to unleash some of these weapons they have on offense?
I think early that's what's going to be. I still expect it to be C.J. Carr. I mean, and I feel it's almost sort of unfortunate for Kenny Minchey, because there's a lot of years. If Kenny Minchey's a junior in 2022, he's the no doubt starter for that team in 2022. He just happened to come at a time when they landed one of the best quarterbacks they've signed in, since Jimmy Clausen. So, CJ had a great spring. You guys saw it in the blue gold game, just some of the throws he made. You're like, we haven't seen a Notre Dame quarterback make a throw like that in a while. And he's got great command of it. The week before there was a what they call their Jersey scrimmage, which is we got access to, and he ends it with a walk-off, back of the end zone post route over the top to Elijah Burris to win it. So he's a special talent. But I think, to your point, you've got a very good offensive line coming back. You've got the best running back room in college football, in my opinion, 1 to 5. And you've got a veteran receiving core. And I think a big reason why it was so important to get Malachi Fields and Will Pauling was because you want to make sure that your quarterback has some weapons he can rely on. You want a young quarterback, David, and this is a quarterback. When you're young, yes, you'd like to think you're always going to process the read correctly, but sometimes you get in those moments like, I just want to look at my guy, and they've added some guys that are one-on-one winners. You obviously Jaden Greathouse had an exceptional contested catch rate last year. We saw in the playoff last year that, hey, if he's one-on-one, Marcus Freeman has told us this in an interview recently, if he's one-on-one, he's not covered. Throw it to him. And then you get a guy like Malachi Fields, who's 6'4", 220, another great one-on-one contested catch player. That's what a young quarterback needs. Great run game and guys that you can just kind of don't overthink it. If it's one-on-one to Malachi, throw him the ball. If it's one-on-one to Jaden on the slot fade, throw him the ball. And I think that's going to take some of that pressure off of him. By the end of the year, by late October, November, you're going to need CJ to go make some game-winning plays. But the goal is going to be early is run the offense, be good on third down, take the occasional one-on-one shot, and let's go run the football, play great defense, and just really get out of that September with wins.
Well, I'm glad you're talking about early in the season, because for as much flack as we give Notre Dame for not being in a conference, they may have the toughest opening stretch in the country. I mean, you're going to open up by going to Miami, Texas A&M at home for the second half of that home and home that you guys have there with the Aggies. Then they're going to get Purdue, and then on the road at Arkansas. And then I want to talk to you about the USC game as well and how that rivalry may not continue. But, which one of these games on the schedule so far do you think gives you the most pause right now, especially when you're talking about early in the year breaking in a new quarterback?
Well, to me, I think the toughest game is the A&M game. I just think the fact that this is going to be a bit of a revenge game for Texas A&M. They're going into year 2 of Mike Elko's system. They have both of their coordinators coming back. They're going to be very good on the offensive line, probably the most experienced offensive line Notre Dame's going to face all season. They may have one of the most experienced offensive lines in the entire country. Their receiving core is going to look very different. Last year they were big and slow. This year they're small and fast. And you've got a quarterback that brings a different dynamic than what you had last year. I think the thing that makes the Miami game maybe comparable is the fact that it is game 1 for your first-year starter. It is game 1 for Chris Ash, and it is on the road. And let's be honest, the last time Notre Dame went down there and played Miami in Hard Rock, it didn't go very well back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think they were able to exercise some of those demons a little bit in the Orange Bowl against Penn State, but that's a different animal than playing Miami down there. So I think that game is going to be challenged for Miami, but the game that I really kind of chalk up is that's going to tell us what kind of team this is in the trenches, what kind of physical team this is going to be that A&M game.
Mm-hmm.
Starting a podcast can feel overwhelming. You got script, setup, filming schedule, logos, and we're trying to figure it all out. But the main thing we found out is that when you're launching something new, that to-do list, man, it grows daily. It's worse than the honey-do list, and it's threatening to take over your life. Finding a tool that both helps and simplifies, well, that can be a game changer. And for millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Make your noises, Dave.
Cha-ching!
Yeah, that's a money noise.
I'm gonna do it.
Shopify powers millions. You can go next.
You got no money.
Shopify powers millions of businesses worldwide and 10% of all U.S. e-commerce. With Shopify, they're behind everyone from big names like Gymshark to that brand new awesome podcast you just discovered that talks about sports called Crain and Company. Because starting out is simple. Just pick one of their hundreds of templates and customize it to match your style. No design skills needed. You ain't got to be Da Vinci. And creating content, that's where their AI really shines. Need product descriptions or catchy headlines? Done. Want better product photos? They've got you covered. The best part is how easy marketing becomes. You reach customers wherever they are, whether they're doom scrolling through social media or checking their email. Now behind the scenes, Shopify handles everything else. Inventory, shipping, returns, all the details you don't want to worry about. Because the truth is, if you're ready to sell something, Shopify is ready for you. So turn your big business idea into
Cha-ching! See, he's broke. He didn't use Shopify.
Yeah, he didn't use Shopify. Everybody laughed and pointed at him. And with Shopify on your side, you can sign up for a $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Crain. That's shopify.com/CRAIN. Shopify.com/Crain. David, show him how to do it.
Cha-ching! Money,
great,
y'all.
Sucked.
Bryan, you said this a little bit earlier, and this is what I'm interested in. Every game or every third down I feel like I watched last year, it was third and Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard running for a first down, breaking 2 tackles in the backfield, doing something miraculous and getting a first down. How do you think Notre Dame's going to approach third down this year? Obviously, 3rd and 10 or plus, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 2, with a new quarterback, CJ Carr, with a different skill set than what you have with Riley Leonard. And my second part of this question is, you have a lot of great players on this team on both sides of the ball. Other than quarterback, what position group are you kind of worried about most, in and out from a depth and talent position?
Well, to your first part, I guess it's great if you're not going to have Riley Leonard, who was money on 3rd and 4th down last year.
Yeah.
You're going to be forced to give the ball to Jeremiah Love, I guess. But honestly, what's interesting is, as much as I loved what Riley Leonard brought to the offense, he was surprisingly bad at reading RPOs and running read zone stuff. So I think that's maybe an element that you can bring to the table. Mike Denbrock used to love on 3rd down with Jaden Daniels to run, those read zones with the Y under, get the quarterback out in the flat. And CJ Carr's a pretty good athlete. I think those are things he can at least be a chain mover on, where Riley was a horse. Riley could break one. CJ's more of a chain mover. But they've also got a kid that I could see being a 3rd down back. Keep your just put this name in the back of your mental Rolodex, fellas. Kedron Young. He's a 5'11", 235-pound kid from Texas who was a redshirt freshman last year. Dylan McCullough actually wanted to play him in the playoffs, but or play him late in the season, but he wanted a redshirt to get some distance between him and Jadarian and Jeremiah. But he had a great spring. He's got great feet, great vision. He was a 4,000-yard rusher in high school in Texas. So he's a guy that I could see, maybe stepping into that third and short goal line type of role. But I think the first option is going to be, we're going to see a lot more Jeremiah Love on third down this year. Mm-hmm. Second part, I honestly, and this kind of goes back to Jake's early point, is there's nowhere that I'm concerned about depth outside of maybe tight end, just because there's some uncertainty. So then it comes down to, okay, but can you play like a championship? Can you play at a championship level at this position? I think that's where Notre Dame is at. Like, there's not like I'm worried about this position that might result in them going 8-4. It's more so, okay, are you going to be good enough here to not be a one and done in the playoff, or to not be, this year you play Georgia and you're not good enough here this year to do that. And I think the big question mark for me is going to be the defensive line, and it's got loads of potential. It's got great depth, but it's a bunch of guys that haven't really necessarily played together as much because of certain guys being injured and out. They've all played, but not together. You've got Gabriel Rubio, Jason Onye's got to step up this year, and you've got Donovan Heinisch. You brought in Jared Dawson from Louisville. Armel Mukum's a kid that they're really expecting big things out of. And then your two Vipers that started the year last year as your starters, Jordan Patelho and Boubacar Traore, got hurt in games 3 and 5 and were out for the year. How are they going to be? So there's a lot of talent, a lot of potential. But look, anyone that knows football as a coach, you love the word potential during recruiting. You hate using the word potential when you're talking about your team.
Yeah.
Because if it's potential, it means it's unrealized. And so you want it to be about what it is, the production. And that's, I think, a position where it's got a chance to be really good, but we don't know. We got to see it first. And I think that's the thing. It could be the difference between maybe Notre Dame being a one and done or Notre Dame making a run. Is the job of Al Washington to be able to get that group to kind of play together, play at a high level, and play consistently.
Bryan, when you look at this offensive line, because, not enough people in our business talk about the line of scrimmage because it's not the sexiest thing of all time. But when you look at this Notre Dame offensive line, because I remember going into last year, you had some of those injuries. You had a big one in fall camp. There were some questions about, maneuvering some guys, trading some guys places. How confident are you, and where do you rank this offensive line in the Marcus Freeman era coming into this year?
It should be their best because it's their most certain. And it's the first time that we've really seen in Coach Freeman's era where we kind of have an idea of who the starters are going to be. And, you started last fall camp. You talk about Charles Jagasaw, supposed to be your left tackle, plays great in the bowl game. And he gets hurt first week of fall camp. He's getting replaced by a true freshman. And then you're playing against Texas A&M with him at left tackle and a redshirt freshman at left guard. And there just was a lot of uncertainty about it. They actually went into the A&M game last year with 6 career starts on their offensive line.
And
6.
won. That's
and
insane.
And ran it down A&M's throat on the final drive of the game, But the problem we saw is they would play great that game, and then a week later get manhandled by Northern Illinois.
Yeah, so young players do.
And that was kind of the story of the offensive line last year. Is 1 week they'd look great, the next week they'd look like, have you guys done this thing before? Like this whole blocking thing, is this new to you? What's going on? Like, if you go watch the Louisville game, I mean, guys, they were giving up run-throughs on slide protection.
Yeah.
Like you don't do that when you're at this level.
Yeah.
And so that came like, the next week, like a week after they'd run the ball very well on Miami of Ohio. So it was a very up and down unit. Now you've got, I think, 55 career starts coming back. And your least experienced guy is Charles Jagasaw with 2 starts, who is 6'7", 330. And as you guys saw against Penn State, had not played all year, comes in against Penn State and just the second half is just pushing Penn State's guys around. So, he's a very talented player. It's just, we have not seen this group as a starting 5 play together. And that's really going to be the thing about it. But there's a lot more of those guys that have played together than what we saw going into last year. So the potential is very high, Jake. It's just, can Joe Rudolph continue building on the run game success they had last year? But the big thing for me, because you don't have Riley Leonard, pass pro's got to get a lot better because you don't have Riley Leonard to bail you out when you get it. There's times last year they would allow a free runner off the edge and Riley just make that guy miss and run for 15 yards.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that this year. So you're going to have to do a better job in just being consistent and steady in pass pro. That's going to be the big key.
Without a doubt. Really, really quickly, Mike, can you just run through Notre Dame's schedule? Because I want to ask Bryan at the end of it.
You're at Miami week 1, Texas A&M at home, Purdue at home, at Arkansas, Boise State at home, NC State at home, USC at home, at Boston College, Navy at home, at Pitt, Syracuse, and at Stanford.
Man, I mean, that's a pretty impressive schedule,
Yeah.
dude. I mean, you throw Boise State in there too. I know no Ashton Genty, but Maddox Madsen comes back. They've got it rocking and roll out there. Bryan, I know you're going to make predictions closer to the year. You do the same thing we do of what you think. But right now, today, where we sit, when you look at that schedule, give me the ceiling and the floor you think for Notre Dame.
Ceiling's is running the table. Going 12-0. I mean, that's the ceiling for this football team. That's what they're capable of. I have a hard time predicting undefeated because this is just college football. Like in 2019, it's Georgia losing at home to South Carolina on their bingo card preseason, right? I mean, that wasn't where it was. Who thought that if you looked at last year's schedule with Florida State and A&M that the only loss Notre Dame would have would be Northern Illinois at home, right? I mean, it's hard to run the table, man. I last year I predicted that there would be no undefeated teams at the end of the regular season, and freaking Oregon coming back against Wisconsin ruined that prediction for me. But the ceiling is 12-0. I mean, they have a better roster than every team they play. But they also had a better roster than Northern Illinois. They also had a better roster than Stanford and Marshall in past years. So it's about, can Coach Freeman get them to play to that level week after week like he did post Northern Illinois? I think the floor is 10-2. I think anything worse than 10-2 for this team is a disappointment. You do have a young quarterback. There's going to be somebody that's going to be better than we thought they were going to be last year. I mean, I didn't have Army as a 12-win team on my prediction sheet last year either. So there's going to be somebody that's better than they are. And you've got a freshman quarterback. You still are a relatively young team, even though they're an experienced team as far as like snaps and starts. They're still young. A lot of freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, and juniors in your starting lineup. There's a chance Notre Dame may have an all-true junior captain group this year. I mean,
Wow.
that's kind of where they are. But I think floor's 10-2. Anything worse than that, then something didn't go right.
Bryan, I want to ask you a question here. Over the last decade, one of the criticisms for Notre Dame is, hey, they can run through their regular season schedule, but when it comes postseason time, they really can't beat the SEC teams of the world. And then this past season, Notre Dame, Georgia college football playoff, Irish come out on top to make it to the college football national championship. I want to ask you, what are the chances that we get the college football playoff matchup that we need and deserve, which is Notre Dame against LSU in this upcoming season?
I was asked this question last week. What is your ideal for Notre Dame to win a title? What's your ideal bracket? And, so like, okay, I want to beat Ohio State because Freeman's 0-3. You want to beat Alabama because that's still the one postseason dragon you've yet to slay. You kind of slayed the Georgia dragon last year a little bit. And, Texas gets a lot of hype, but they still have a lot to prove as well. But could you imagine a first round game with LSU coming up to South Bend to play Notre Dame, like the hype that would get? Yeah, that would be great. And look, LSU, I like this LSU team this year. I think that it's going to come down to their offensive line. They were solid last year. You lost 4 starters and Will Campbell. Can they get that going? They'll have good skill talent like they always have. Nussmeier's a kid that can put up some numbers. He's got to protect the ball better in big games. Their defense is getting better under their new DC. I think year 2 is going to be even better. So I expect LSU to be – I don't know if I'm ready to put them like top 5 to 6 like people are. They have a lot to still prove to me. But that would be amazing to see them get in and have to travel up to South Bend.
So just for clarification now, would you rather see Notre Dame beat Brian Kelly and LSU in round 1 of the playoff at Notre Dame, or would you rather beat them in the national championship?
I'd rather beat them in round 1.
Wow.
Because then he gets knocked out again. And then the thing that I've always said to you guys that I got hammered for so hard a couple of years ago, thanks for that clips, guys, for getting me the LSU
You're
hate
welcome.
During that period of time. But I knew what I was saying. I had already been experiencing it. But, I mean, that's the question with Brian Kelly, right, is you talked about Notre Dame couldn't do this and this and this. Well, now the question is, can LSU, consistently win those games? You had the big win over Bama in year 1, but since then it's been a struggle. You can't win your openers. You got blown out by Bama last year. So, just with my feelings towards Brian Kelly, I don't know that I want him to make a run all the way to the championship game.
No, it's personal.
But it's a storyline too, though, right? I mean, the storyline coming to South Bend, I think would be huge.
Oh, for sure. And so how would that, Miami and Notre Dame, we had the Catholics versus the convicts. What would LSU versus Notre Dame be? The Catholics versus the Catholics?
The Cajuns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Catholics versus the Cajuns.
Right? Catholics versus Cajuns. I like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's a
Kelly's
lot of
Catholic, right?
Catholics in
Kelly's
Louisiana.
That's a
but-
A lot of
T-shirt.
Catholics in
That's a
Louisiana.
Yeah, that's a T-shirt right there.
There's-
Trademark Crain and Company.
Yeah, definitely,
Plus Bryan
definitely.
Driskell.
Well, Bryan, thanks so much for joining us, my friend. We're really, really excited to see what Notre Dame does and kind of an encore with a new quarterback going into this year. Tell everybody where they can find your work.
Type in Irish Breakdown, YouTube channel, wherever you listen to podcasts. You go to the website, irishbreakdown.com. If you want to go to our message board, it's boards.irishbreakdown.com. I try to keep it simple for you guys, but you can always find us anywhere. And then if you want to get a hold of me on Twitter, it's at Coach D178.
Yeah, I always wonder what interesting stuff pops up outside of your website when you type in Irish Breakdown. Like if there's some like fraternity party if Notre Dame loses, like
creamer.
just going
That's my
off.
side
the-
gig.
An absolute creamer. But BD, thanks so much, my friend. We'll see you again shortly.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're a Notre Dame fan. Talk a lot about the Fighting Irish, so make sure you're subscribed and like the chances of us not being jacked about, can Notre Dame do it again? We're going. Gone.